Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Power Within podcast. I'm your host, Laurie. Today, I'm really excited to share with you my interview with Chris Thibodeau. Chris is someone who really inspires me. He is someone who takes a stand and is not afraid to speak up and question what's going on in the world. I met him in the past year, and he was standing out with his flag in the town square, and he was protesting the mandates that were going on for the vaccines and speaking out. And he's really someone who, will go out and do that, sometimes by himself, even when it makes him uncomfortable. And I think it's really important. He's not someone who just sits back and lets everyone else, worry about what's going to happen. He has actually taken this on himself. And currently he is running for the New Hampshire House of Representatives for Hillsborough District 8, Ward 6 in Nashua. And I love that he did this because he wants to make a difference. And we talk about some of his talking points for his campaign. He did advance from the September Republican primary, and now he's on the ballot for the November 8th elections coming up. And he is someone who I really admire, and I love getting to talk with him because he does love to talk to people. And he loves to talk to people from all sides so that he can understand, and you can have open and honest conversations with each other and maybe walk away and learn something from one another. Maybe even change your mind, that's something that I've learned from Chris and from others within that group. And I'm so thankful that he agreed to come on. I know he's super busy trying to get ready for everything with the elections and door walking and everything he needs to do. So I'm so happy to share this conversation with you. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope it inspires you to get out in your communities and to make a difference and start getting involved. It's so important that we get involved in our communities and what's going on, because there's a lot of things that people don't realize that's happening right underneath, their noses. And that's where it starts. Everything starts in your communities and the smaller parts of government to get all the way up to that federal point to get where we are now. So I hope that you guys enjoy this, and here we go. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you for having me, Laurie. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic.
Awesome. So I wanted to have you on the podcast because I met you last year when you were standing outside and you were with your flag and your the signs for the vaccine mandates and all those different things that were in there, and you were Scott and a couple other people.
Right?
And I noticed on a couple times, and you had posted about this on your Facebook, about sometimes you have to be the only one out there that goes out and does this. And I thought that that was really great because a lot of people won't spend that time to, go out by themselves or too afraid. So I want to ask you, when you did have to go out by yourself, what was that like? What inspired you to do that? And then what inspired you to continue to keep doing that?
On the so to be fair, it was only a few times out of it's just a little over a year now. So I started September. It was probably the last week of September, I believe, that I started, and it's probably been four times, maybe five, that I've had to do it. Chose to do it by myself, didn't have to do it by myself. Um, the first time, my first time going. I was by myself. So I started by myself. So right off the bat, it was by myself. Um, and for something so simple, it was definitely an emotional challenge. Um, there were times where I felt silly. Um, the typical things people are worried about, right? I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be laughed at. I'm going to be picked on. How are people going to react? So all those feelings were there the very first time, and the very last time that I did it by myself, the same feelings are there. It was a challenge every time I knew I was going to be there by myself. It was definitely a challenge. Um, but yeah, and what made me do it by myself was um, the message I wanted to get across. Um, I needed to be able to do it by myself. If I wasn't willing to do it with other people, I needed to be willing to do it with myself. If that makes any sense.
It does.
To if you're going to stand for something, you got to stand for something, whether others are going to join you or not. So that was the feeling I had, and I just knew um, I had to do it uh, for myself. I knew I needed to do a something, and I didn't know where to direct the feelings I was having, the anger I was feeling, the frustrations. I didn't know where to put them. I didn't know how to direct them, other than I was so used to putting stuff on Facebook and questioning things, and sometimes met with thumbs up, and sometimes met with opposition, which is good. I don't mind opposition because ultimately I want to get to the bottom of things. I want to have an understanding. So I was okay with that. Um, but going to the hill, I call it the hill, um, was a an outlet. So I needed that outlet.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because you just kind of touched on something too, where you would go on Facebook and you would, express your outrage and things like that. And a lot of people just stick to social media. And I think it's really important. And I remember when I saw you guys, and I had those feelings at first, like, I'm not going out there, and then I was like, I'm going one day. And it's so important because, you can sit behind social media, but ultimately, if you're not out and you're not in your community, you're not going to make change. And nothing's going to change being a keyboard hero unless you get
Right.
out there and you take a stand. So felt that was really important.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Keyboard warrior only gets you so far, and it you hope that the message gets across, versus being in the trenches, so to speak. I mean, I don't want to make it sound awful, but being in the trenches, being on the front line, actually doing the thing, um, you definitely feel more of a sense of accomplishment, and like I'm doing a something versus just bitching and complaining.
Yep. Yep. And I know that you actually just advanced from the September Republican primary, and you are running for state New Hampshire House State of Representatives for Nashua Ward 6. But before
Yes.
we get into that, I want to ask you, has politics always been something that you've been passionate about? I know the answer to this, but I would kind of like you to explain it. What got you into like being passionate about politics and wanting to run?
Yeah. I guess the quick answer is no. I haven't always been. Um, I I have always voted since I was able to vote. Um, I was a hardcore Democrat at the beginning. I voted for Bill Clinton both of his terms, um, and then started to have an awakening, I guess, and realized that there was not they did not have my um, I did not feel they had what I considered my best interests at heart. So I've always been registered as an independent since Bill Clinton, because I think sometimes people use that to give themselves the feeling that they are in control, and that they're not backing a certain party. And fundamentally, most people are either, for the majority, one way or the other. They are. It's just, um, and there's nuances between there.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, I was concerned. I voted with the hopes of that my vote was making a difference, but I didn't really pay attention. I started paying attention more um, at the end of it was really after 9/11 is when I really started paying attention and getting more interested in politics. And then from there, it was I would vote, have conversations. I wasn't on Facebook at the time, um, and I would try not to put a whole lot of political discourse or information on Facebook. I would just put if I found something interesting enough that I wanted to share, I would share things, and I found a lot of things and shared a lot of things. But that was really the extent of my involvement in politics. I've tried to converse with my kids about the importance of it, and at their age, I did not care either. So I can only expect them to care as much as I do now. Would be hopeful but foolish, because they're still young adults and trying to find their way. Um, some of them are more interested than others, and yeah. And then last year, when I started doing the standing on the hill, um, I felt like that was it, right? Like I was making a huge difference, and I'd get honks, I'd get waves, and people would acknowledge it. People like yourself would stop and come by, and a few times people would ask questions, which was always nice because that's why I really wanted to do it, and I wanted to um, invite conversation, to have discussions, because I'm very curious, and I want to know why things are the way they are. So I'm very curious by nature. So that was always my goal, is I wanted to be up there, make a presence, invite conversation. And one of the women who stood with us, Julie Smith, she's actually running for state rep as well. And she had mentioned that um, there's a lot of Republican seats that needed to attempt to get filled, and it was it was a spur of the moment thing. And I said, you know what? I said that's how I'm going to try and make a difference. I'm gonna get involved. I was nervous, and still am. I want to do it to with the entire goal of just making a difference. I want this whole process to mean something, and yeah, so that's why I'm doing it. I want to make a difference, and I don't like the way things are going. I don't like the way things are at the federal level. I don't like some of the things at the state level, and some of the things at the city level, which that's a whole nother uh, ballpark. But so that's why I got involved.
That's awesome. And I think that doing that, that's actually like a huge step into making change. And not a lot of people would be comfortable with that. Now, I know it can maybe vary from state to state, but can you share a little bit of the process of how you got, like, how you were able to get yourself into the ballot, what that entails, and how when you get in and then you advance, what the next step is? I know we have the elections coming up in November, so that's where people would vote for you as well.
Right. So the process was actually very simple. Um, Step one is deciding that you want to do it. Step two, I had to go down to City Hall and fill out a form, and I think it was $5. I think was to file my form. So there was a cost, but I hope I'm remembering that correctly. But I believe it was $5 to submit the form, and I got a packet um, um, from Concord, from the Secretary of State, and had all the information in there on what my next steps were as far as getting on the ballot and stuff. So there's some other information I had to fill out, and boom, just like that, I was an official candidate for a Republican seat, and yeah, it was fairly painless so far. Challenging, but fairly painless.
Well, you have some great talking points too for you. I was looking at your main page on our local, the Patch,
Yep.
And they, they had asked you some questions and you filled it out, and I thought it was really awesome, because I know that your background, you do mechanical design and freelance, you're a freelance artist. So I was like, oh, like, this is someone who really isn't political, but really is taking the step to make those changes. And then you had some great talking points, and I do want to touch on some of those. So, one of the main things that you said is protecting the integrity of elections. And I want to ask you why that's important to you.
Sure. Right off the bat, people are just going to assume because I'm a Republican that I'm doing it because my guy lost and I think it was stolen. Um, and that's not the case. Every election, people claim that the election was stolen because they're mad that their person of desire lost the election. This time, to be fair, I was either paying more attention than I had in the past, or there was a way more um, conscious effort to sway the public away from what they were seeing, what they were feeling, and so one of those two things is true, and it very well could be that I was just paying more attention. To be honest and to be fair, I could have been just me paying more attention this year. But I'll tell you, I heard and I saw a lot of things that just stuff that raises an eyebrow. I'm not here to claim that Donald Trump uh, won the election and that it was stolen. All I know is that questions were raised. A lot of people were concerned, and I feel a lot of people's voices were ignored. Um, and since 2020, I have never felt such kind of started with COVID, but such a polarizing um, of the American people than I had. I mean, I'm 51, so I haven't been through a whole lot of of being alert and adult and awake enough to pay attention to maybe some other big things have happened, but as far as polarizing, but I've never seen it like this before, and to the point where people have gotten ugly in my point being is I don't want what happened in 2020, regardless of who wins. I don't want what happened in 2020 to ever happen again. I the what we went through. Um, I've got family members who are um, very excited about the current president and think he is the cat's pajamas, and that's fine. That's really fine. But we've also it's not to a point where I don't converse with them, but some of the people I love very much and are responsible for me being on this planet. Um, and so it has caused, I don't say friction, it is even in the family level, it has caused little bits of discomfort. So we solve that by we just don't talk about politics. Um, but I've heard stories of people who have in the last 2 years have gotten a divorce because
Yep.
their views have grown so far apart that they can't even rationalize with each other. And if it's ripping families apart, it's ripping the country apart, and I don't ever want it to happen again. I want so the integrity of the election, it has to be. I would say it's got to be the most, other than the looming of a God forbid a potential World War III. It's got to be one of the most important things we discuss, and one of the most important things we talk about, and one of the most important things on the ballot is ensuring that whoever we put in to office is dead set on ensuring election integrity. I don't care what party you support. Uh, I don't ever want to have to go through this again, ever. And I don't think
Yeah,
the country can handle it.
yeah, I think that's really important too because like a lot of people, I used to just vote Democratic myself. And I think that a lot of people, think that way that it's because the Republican candidate lost or something. But I think what people are missing is that it is so important regardless of who you support that you want election integrity. And that should be number one for everyone because you want that fair chance. Everyone wants their candidate to win, and only one person's coming out a winner. But you know what? You want to make sure that that's fair. And I think when you were talking about the divide, I've myself, I'm only in my 30s, but I've never also seen that divide that we've seen where COVID and elections and everything, it's kind of ripped everyone apart, and it's changed friendships, it's changed family relationships, dynamics, people don't want to talk. And I was like, at first when the whole COVID thing happened, everyone was very like, oh, let's all come together and support each other after they mangled each other for groceries. But then, then that had happened. But then after this, I've noticed this really, I feel like people are really like more ugly than they've ever been and more nasty. And I'm like, what has happened in our country that we all hate each other so much? And I do agree with you. It's really important that we don't get to that point again. And regardless if you're Democrat or Republican or right in the middle, independent, make sure that you guys want that, that fair process for whoever does get elected.
Right. Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, one of the things I keep reminding people on Facebook, probably not weekly, but maybe bi-weekly. I put a little thing on it. Don't forget, get yourself registered. If you're not registered yet, yes, you can register the day of the election, but get out and register. It is so darn important, and I'm hammering my boys, the ones that have never voted before, to get out, get registered. Even if between now and November 8th you change your mind, you don't want to register to vote. Yes, you can do it the day of the election, but get down there, go through the process, get registered to vote, get involved. And I don't care what party you're for. It is we the people. It is about we the people, and you have it. There was a time in my life where I'm just like, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. And I've got a lot of friends who don't vote because they're like, it doesn't matter. And their stance is, well, it gives me a reason to bitch. If I don't vote, then I've got the right to bitch. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's the other way around. You need to vote, and you need to vote, and we need every legal vote, every single If you are legally able to vote, you should be out there voting. You should be out there voting. We need votes.
Yep. And on for I know New Hampshire you can vote the day of. I know some states that's not the case too. So make sure if people are listening that you do check your states what their process is for that. And I think too, touching on voting, I used to be like someone who's like, I only want to vote in presidential elections. I don't care about the other stuff. But it is even more important to vote for your smaller state elections than it is to vote for these bigger ones because what is happening at the smaller level is affecting what's happening at the bigger level. And I don't think people really process that as much. Is that something that you've seen as well?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Same thing. I used to care who was the president, and sad to say, there were times where I'm like, that sounds like a nice name. All right. Truthful and honest, there are times I'm like, I've heard that person's name, and that does happen now too, right? Sometimes it's just who has more signs up and who has more commercials. It really is. Sometimes it is that. Um, and people, I wouldn't care. I would care enough to vote for the president, and then state stuff could give a flip about really, and city stuff, town stuff, even less. Um, and getting more involved in politics, um, I've come to the realization that it starts here. It starts in your neighborhood, then it starts in your town or your city and everybody should be involved in what's going on in their town and their city. I am becoming more aware of what's going on in my city, and I am shocked. And then people need to be involved at what's happening in their state. The things that impact your day to day happen locally. They don't happen at the federal government. They happen locally. They happen in your community, in your city, in your town, and in your state. Those are the things that impact your day to day quality of life. The things at the federal level, of course, everybody looks at the federal government for you know, the mommy and the daddy, and that's not the job of the federal government. And yep, I lost my train of thought,
No, that's okay.
but
Yeah, I think that that's important because, I've actually learned, I'm learning a lot of stuff from like you and Scott and other people who are sharing stuff locally. And then I'm like, okay, I want to get more involved with this. Like an example that I'll share with people is that you just shared an article, and I was not aware of this either, about they wanted to build an asphalt plant downtown. And when I looked at it and I started reading the article, and that'll affect ultimately what people don't realize is that, when they're going to do things like this in your towns, ultimately it's in the areas that are probably more lower income. People don't have access to, the different levels. It goes to landlords, but they don't know about it. And this asphalt company that they wanted to bring in, they were like, oh, well, we'll use like chemicals to, when I was reading the article, we'll use chemicals to alleviate the smell, but also the asphalt, which is used to create the roads and everything, they leak arsenic and lead into your water and into your streets and everything that you do. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that this was going on. So I'm learning a lot from you guys. And then it's making me go, hold on, I'm going to look a little bit more too. And that's really important because, like you said, we can look at everything from the big level. But if you're not looking at everything from that smaller level first, that's what's going to impact you. So it is so vital for people to be in their communities and finding out what's going on locally.
yeah, for sure. And with that story, so what started with that story and me posting that, I don't want anybody to make the assumption that Chris Thibodeau knew what the heck was going on, because the day I shared that was the day I found out as well. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody was on Facebook, on the Nashua Scoop Facebook page, had mentioned, they were talking about when the next sine wave protest, whatever. I believe that. I hope I'm using the right words, but that kind of a thing, uh, to stand in opposition of it. And I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? Asphalt plant. So I started looking into it, and that's when I found out that there was an asphalt plant. And then at first, I was like, well, shame on me for not being in tune enough, um, with what's going on, that I was unaware as well. And I don't know if it's in the town newspaper. I don't know if it's just word of mouth, how people find out about these things. And I'm sure maybe back in the patch there was something, I don't know. Um, but yeah, so I was becoming aware of these things as well, and people do need to get more involved. It was just whether you support it or not. I don't. I have not been versed enough in it and done as much research as you. You've already looked more deeper into it than I did, and I know I need to. But people just need to get more aware of what's going on around them, myself included.
Yeah. Yep. And another talking point is in your campaign you had talked about being a supporter of small business and how important that is. And I think that that's another way to support your communities and get out and be in the communities. And you saw with COVID, there was huge impacts with that. Every state was talking about that. I worked at a restaurant part time of my dad's friend, and that ended up going out of business. So your small local businesses are really kind of hurting still from the whole COVID effects.
Yeah,
And thought that that was a really great talking point that you had and so important for the communities.
yeah. Um, literally, I mean, they are the backbone of the community. They provide a lot of starter jobs. They provide um, a sense of community in what happened to businesses in general. Businesses, small businesses, it's always difficult to start a small business, and but the last 2 years was so challenging for them, and restaurants and small mom and pop shops that have been around forever had to close up shop, and we really need to ensure um, that they can thrive, that they can um, rebuild. Um, they're just so important, and I don't have all the answers to fix it, but I know it's important, and and that's why I put it on there. I don't have the magic key. I don't, but I do know that it's important, and I want to ensure that the small businesses thrive and survive and are around for years to come.
Yep, they're what make the communities unique because you're
Yeah,
someone's bringing something that you can't typically find in these big box stores, whether it's just a like a down home feel or a very welcoming. Like now everything's just so commercial, and a lot of these little mom and pops places you come in and I know it's not like back in the day, but I remember growing up at the little mom and pop shop. If we didn't have a lot of money, the store owners knew our parents, so they would say, "We'll get it from your parents later. You can go ahead and get what you need," and that's important
right,
because in the big box stores, if you don't have it, you're not getting. So,
right.
and I know that also speaking of being younger and all that, you do have your kids, and another talking point that you had is on uh, the you had said that, and I didn't know this, and I was like, well, this is crazy. Some of the other candidates that are running had voted against like kids having lemonade stands, and I was like, what is that? And you were talking about how that's important for children to build those entrepreneurial skills, and also parental rights and what is taught. So these are like some really important topics. So I really wanted you to touch base on this and give your thoughts on why this is important to you.
Yeah, you know, not to use the Whitney Houston song, but the children are the future, and it is so important that our kids are prepared. And I say Brave New World in a good way, not for any conspiracy thing. That our kids are ready for the future. It is going to be a wild future. Things advance so much faster, exponentially faster year after year, and our kids really need to be able to come out of school with the ability to. I know some of the classes that they have focus on this, but not enough, in my opinion. I mean, balancing a checkbook, running a household, and I know they have small programs for it, but that is so critical and so important, and those things aren't taught. And I know a lot of people were talking about cursive isn't taught anymore. I'm like, other than filling out a couple greeting cards a year or signing my name, how often do I use cursives? And is it a nice skill to have? Probably. Um, is it a necessary skill for the future? People probably hate this answer, but no. I mean, I mean, it's they need to be able to survive in the future that's ahead of us, and life skills, reading, absolutely, reading, math, right? The fundamental stuff. Um, but I'm also concerned about some of the books that are made available into the libraries, and I there's a lot of books that are available. I don't know exactly what's in the Nashua schools. I am generalizing, just to be fair, um, that are made available to kids that I don't care what the reason of the book is. There are things being taught and supported in our schools that are irrelevant to sex, gender, and racism at certain ages. It just is. I don't remember ever having a conversation with my teachers in elementary or middle school regarding sex education. Um, when they pull the boys and girls to their, the boys went to this room, the girls went to that room, and they teach them about some things, and they teach the boys about some things. That happened. Um, but I believe I recall, at least permission slips were required, and parents were able to be involved. And now, more and more, again, generalizing, um, things are being taught and introduced to our children that I feel is wildly inappropriate.
I agree with that. When you were just talking about that, even for me, I went, in elementary school, that wasn't talked about. Junior high, maybe there was some whisperings of it. And then in high school, that's when you had your health ed classes, and that's where it would be taught. And I'm not a parent, but I do have my nieces and my nephew. And I would be horrified if they went to school and came home and asked some of the questions. Like, you'll see on social media, I've seen in some of the states, I think one of the teachers was in Florida or something. She was teaching kindergarten, and she was talking like, she was like, I'm telling the kids about transgender and this and that. And whatever you choose to do with your life, that's fine, but that's your thing. But these kids should not be going to school and learning about this at a young age, because we're confusing the children. And that's my stance on this. I don't care how people choose to live their lives, and whatever your affiliation is, that's your business. But when kids come in, we need to teach these kids, like you said, there's core things that need to be taught. There's things that they need to be learning to be able to advance in the future. And that's something that is not of an to me of not of importance. And I think that you're just confusing a generation of children to believe and think in different things, and then they are growing up confused, and then you see their surgeries going on, they're irreversible, and it's just messing people up. I know there was a whole documentary that came out on this, of people who were kind of integrated into that, and now they've made that decision, and it's ruined their life. And so I think that there's a time and a place for that, maybe later on, but these young kids should not be being immersed in that. And I agree with you on that 100%.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they absolutely they need to be protected. And I believe I saw, if it's not the same story you're talking about, very similar. Um, a teacher, I believe it was a female, and she felt it important that her kids knew that she was a lesbian and that she was married to a woman. And like you said, I'm indifferent. I don't want to say I don't care. I'm indifferent to how you live your life. As long as you're not hurting anybody, I am indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
But nor a teacher, a heterosexual teacher, should not be discussing, you know, should not be discussing those things either. So it's not because it's an alternative lifestyle. I don't even know if that's the appropriate word, but the last thing I want to do is guard my words. I don't like feeling like I need to guard my words. Um, yeah,
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, and I agree with that too. Regardless of however you identify, or however your relationship status is, there's some things that should be left out of the school systems, and I
yeah,
agree with that. Um, I am gonna switch a little bit too, because I think
sure.
that something else that you had talked about, that's important is term limits, which I think are so important, because we have so many elected officials that come in and make career politics, and they are not into the best interest of the people. As you say, we the people. And for anyone who doesn't know, his shirt is really cool. It says, "We the people are pissed off." And this is something huge, and this is where it would start, right from small levels, where it would have to work up to the bigger levels of government, right, to implement those term limits.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And mainly it's at the federal level is the term. and it should be across the board because even in your towns or your city, I mean, some people have selectmen or aldermen or city council members or whatever form of government your particular town or city has that have had that position for years, for years, and they get voted in um, because you know Sally, you know Tom, and Tom's had the job for 35 years, and who could do it better than Tom? Who could do it better than Sally? They've done it for 35 years, and really, the whole point of government was for intended to be the common man and to get in there and do a little bit of civic duty and then go back to your farm, go back to your job. And and I would consider myself probably and a lot of the other people running as well, um, especially for the ones that I've met, are not career politicians. They are people who are concerned. They're people who are trying to get involved. There's a couple people that have run before and have had the position before and then didn't win the election last time and now running again. And they're doing pretty good and hope they get in. Um, but yeah, the term limits, it's so important at all levels, in my opinion, and especially at the federal government. There are people that have been in there for so long, and I feel that it, and I believe the position is pretty common, that it breeds complacency, and uh, they they don't they're not judged on the results because they've got that name recognition, and they start getting too comfortable. And I feel that that is why I don't say nothing gets done, but not a whole lot gets done at the federal level, just because the focus is on pandering. It is focused on getting reelected, and I feel people will work harder if they know I've only got discussions can be had on what that term limit is, but if I know I've only got 4 years, if I know I've only got 4, the president, right? So you get a maximum of 8 years, um, and but we've got people in Congress that have literally been there since I was in diapers. I mean, really, people have been in there for literally forever, and they went to school to be a politician. They Their first job was, being admin for their favorite candidate, and then they've been in politics their whole life, and that is their life. They've never had a real job. They Some people high up in the federal government that have never had a real job. Not that they haven't worked, but they haven't had a job, and their job has been politics. And they just need to switch that focus and get their job done. There's so many there's things that are being talked about that have been talking points since I was in high school. And if if you gave a crap and actually wanted to get it done, knowing you've got 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever, to make a difference, you'd get off your butt and you'd friggin' figure it out. Yes, compromise. You need to work across the aisle. People talk about, bipartisanship, and absolutely, we have opposing views, and people need to work together. And you just need to get crap done to get those things. Tired of the political volleyballs and the key items that they keep tossing back and forth, and just institute some real change and get over it, and let's move on to the next thing and build that better world, that new future for all of us. There's so many things that we need to focus on, and career politicians are such a detriment to that, and they need to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, if the president has an 8-year term, 2 terms, 8 years, and that's it, I think that should be the max for all of the government, things. Because, like you said, more stuff would get done. And the problem is now, or what I think the problem is, what I see going on is now you have these career politicians, and everyone is either far left or far right, and no one's meeting in the middle. So it's a bunch of bickering going on constantly, and the things that should be getting done aren't. Like, someone that at first I was like, oh, she's really cool, and I think that she would be a good addition, was AOC. And I am like, she needs to go now, because, like, she'll show up to her events with her, the Met Gala that's, $45,000 ticket to get in, and her tax the rich dress, and saying, oh, these people aren't great. And, oh, but wait, let's hold on, let's go and sell $100 sweatshirt to the poor people who are my constituents,
Right.
and those people. So I think that you're seeing a lot more of that. Is, for me, it looks like all these people are getting in for money grabs and trying to make a career out of it, so that they don't have to go back into their communities and work. And I love that idea of, limits. And I think it would be 8 for any line, I think, is where you do, because everything's getting stale and it's getting old. You see Pelosi and McConnell, and they're just so outdated, and nothing's getting done,
Hmm.
and they got to go. And
Right.
I think that that would be great for all the lines. So I love that that's something that you stand for and you want to, see a change in. I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so another thing that I really loved is that you were talking about, and I know that this is at local level too, but this is also country level. Like, when I've been talking to people asking, the cost of healthcare, energy costs, and taking care of our veterans. And a lot of people that I've talked to, these are big talking points, because we have our own veterans that we are not taking care of in this country. And I am all for people coming in, legally doing the whole process. But we have a bunch of people who have served our country and taking care of us, and they're not being taken care of. And I think that that's a problem. The healthcare is very expensive. The deductibles and copays, the prices of life saving medications that people need are out of control. Energy costs are through the roof. We've seen everyone say electric or gas prices are going up. Electric prices are through the roof. With these electric supplies, and it doesn't feel like the people are working for the people in their communities to get stuff like this fixed. So, can you touch on these topics, and why these are important to you to be fixed locally, and small level, and then big level?
Yeah. So I will, in all honesty, I do not claim to have a solution. I just know they're a concern to me, and I would assume they're a concern to everybody, unless you've got so much money you don't care what your gas bill is every month, or you don't care what your electric bill is every month. Um, I've done as much as I can. I've I've done as much as I believe I can at my house, right? I've changed the
Mm-hmm.
LED bulbs, and try to get on. Um, I just contacted Liberty about getting on to, because I have natural gas as my fuel source for my home, and I'm nervous as hell as what's going to happen this winter. And so I got on to their program to the budget payment plans, and to get locked into a rate that's going to, I'm assuming it's going to benefit me. If not, it's going to benefit Liberty, and then we'll worry about it next year. Um, but at this point, it's just a survival thing. Um, so I'm very concerned about the energy costs. I'm very concerned about, people automatically assume, if you're not for the Affordable Care Act, that you just don't care about the people. And I think everybody should be able to get medical services, and they can. To be fair, you can go into any emergency room and get care. So there's lines, there's waiting, and the lines get longer because some people can't afford to go um, to see a primary care physician, that they wait till they get out of work, and then they go to the ER, and then they flood the ERs. So I get that. There's a huge problem with that, and medicine is just, some of the medication is just astronomical. The insulin, um, the EpiPens are outrageous, and it's got a, I believe, I could be wrong. My sister will kill me because, but I believe the EpiPen, it doesn't have a very long shelf life, and so unfortunately, you can't keep it for years, and you have to replenish it even if you don't utilize the pen. Um, so those things are affect everybody. So they're a concern to me because they should be, I believe, and they should be a concern to everybody. Everybody should care. Veterans, I've always had. My father was a Marine, um, Army and the Marines, but he likes to call himself just a Marine, but that's fine. Um, and my father has, installed into me the concern for veterans, and I guess it's just being a military brat. Um, I've had a soft spot for veterans, and I've always had a soft spot for homelessness. And um, what started that was, you know, comic relief back in the day. I don't know if you remember that comic relief, or maybe you're too young, but Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Whoopi Goldberg did a show on HBO, and it was a fundraiser every year. Anyway, so I started really getting involved, concerned and involved that way. Um, and the veterans and the homelessness, just specifically our veterans, some of these people have never served overseas, but so many have just they've served overseas and they come back um, wounded emotionally, not just physically but emotionally, and and as the common citizen, we cannot appreciate what they're going through and what the mental cost of that war has had on them to the point where um, they they don't know how to function in civilian society anymore. And I don't want to say they're broken. I don't mean broken in a bad way. Um, I, I don't know how to fix it, but I'm concerned, and some of them have paid the ultimate sacrifice with their life, and some of them have spent 10, 15, 20 years, and some of them have spent much of that time overseas, fighting in a war, and then they come back, and not to the point like the Vietnam era where they were vilified and called baby killers and whatnot. Um, but still, I don't feel we treat them. And I know the word hero gets tossed around a lot now because we call everybody a hero. But these people have chose a life of protecting and trying to preserve the very thing um, that we take for granted on a daily basis. Uh, Literally on a daily basis, we we're so flippant with so many things in our life, and somebody has paid a price for that, and they deserve to be treated so much better. Um, they deserve to be treated so much better than we treat them, and it's not right. And the John Stewart and the 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 burn pit bill, right? So that was a big thing not too long ago, and yeah, they need to be treated better.
They do, and it is important. And my dad was a Marine too. Well, he'll say to me, "Once a Marine, always a Marine." So don't call me a
Right?
former Marine. But it takes a toll because I don't think that people realize how much they sacrifice with their families, with their time, because they are ultimately serving and protecting, the United States of America and the values. So when they come home, they're essentially discarded, or when they leave, or they have an injury, or something happens. I think what really made me take notice of this was a few years ago. I have a friend, and she was in the military, and she's like, I'm gonna be homeless. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they were the banks wouldn't work with her. They were, she was going through a lot. She was suffering with depression. And I was like, how are we doing this to the people who serve and protect our country? Because ultimately, if these people didn't make this sacrifice to take care of our country, we wouldn't have what we have. We'd have dictatorships, and we'd have, people overtaking us. We have these people going out every day and taking care of us ultimately, even though we're not seeing it on the back end. And to see so many of them homeless, and this is something that I'm very passionate about, because I'm all for people coming in legally. I think that it's fine. You know what? Everyone wants to come. It's always been said, the American dream. I'm all for people coming in, getting that opportunity. But I also think that we need to first take care of those people who have served and protected us. Because if we don't, it's heartbreaking when you go, they'll call places tent cities, and you go down and you see all these people there. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make up some care packages and bring this down. But in areas, especially in New England, it gets real cold here.
Mm.
And, not everyone goes to shelters and things like that. And I think a lot of people kind of associate homelessness with people who have given up and they don't care. But a lot of those people have a lot of pride as well. And it's very hard for them too. So for me, that's something that I'm really passionate about, is taking care of these people and placing them, helping them. Let's get them on their feet, because if they didn't make those sacrifices, or if they didn't watch their friends make the ultimate sacrifice that they served with, you know, that's really hard on them. And so that's something that's I'm really passionate about. So I love that that you want to work on that. And I think that that's so incredible. So thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah, it's yeah, very important.
And I'm so thankful that you came on here, Chris. I think that the few times I've gotten to talk to you, you're always so open. Even on your signs, you're like, email me, you can email me, and when we were standing outside and people would come up and ask questions or whatever, you were always very friendly and very open. And I love that you want to have those conversations with people, and you're not someone who's standoffish or rude. You want to understand. And I think that that's something that makes a candidate great, because you're not just looking at it, even though you're on the Republican ballot, you're not someone who's going to say, oh, you're Democrat, I don't want to hear what you've got to say. Like,
Right.
let's talk, let's hear what you've got to say, and let's see what we can do for it. So I think that that's really important, and I think that that's really great.
Yeah. Um, Stephen Covey. Um, he's an author. He had the Five Habits, right? And one of them is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Um, and so I told you in the beginning that I'm just curious. I want to know why. I want to know why things are the way they are. I want to know why people act the way they act. I want to know, why do you feel that way? And and there are times where I'm going to be wrong, and there are times where you're going to be wrong, and it's okay. And we can get to the middle by having that conversation, and really just trying to find an understanding of why people are the way they are, without uh, cutting them off at the knee, and just excusing their. And sometimes I know the last 2 years, there's so many things that have just made people um, dismiss other people's, both ways, um, both sides of, back to, Republican, Democrat, conservative, whatever. Um, there's so many things that people have just excused, myself included. I've done it. Um, uh, I'm not infallible, and just dismiss somebody's feelings and their stance on things because it's easier. And sometimes it's a challenge to try and keep an open mind, because you disagree with it um, so wholeheartedly that it sounds like, lunacy. And so you don't want to even have that conversation, but you just need to. We need to find that middle common ground and discuss these issues. We need to be able to have the conversations, and so many of these things could be solved about and just by having these conversations. And if we could discuss openly, without everybody wanting to put a label on you and vilify people for questioning things that are just new. I mean, there's so many things that are being expressed the last 2 years, more so. I know they've been around, but so many more things that are just being expressed and feelings that are being expressed, and they just need to be. It's okay to have questions and to try to find an understanding, and then to gain an understanding. Sometimes you form an opinion, and sometimes you have a conversation, and sometimes you change your opinion, and that's okay too. And that's how we grow. And we just need to learn to communicate better with each other and find that middle ground, that common ground.
Yeah, that is really important. And I think that, it's important to find people that want to, like yourself, that want to run and want to make change, that are willing to meet in the middle. Because unfortunately, I've also seen the opposite where people are like, oh, I'm running for the people and I'm doing this. And that's not really the agenda. And once they get in the office, and you see that on all levels of government, they're for themselves. So it's really important to, regardless if you're a Democrat and you start talking to someone like you who's, now you're on the Republican ballot, but you're someone who's wants to understand everybody, and you're someone who wants to take in all that conversation and meet in the middle and say, okay, this is how we can make change. But here I want, like, make sure you think for yourself, make sure that you question things, because no matter who's running in office, it's very important that people question them. And it's very important that people question the agenda and the motives and everything. And that's something that we've seen, because for the last couple years, so many people that did want to speak out, and so many people who did question things were called conspiracy theorists, and they were canceled. And now you're starting to see things are changing, and the narrative has changed. And a lot of people are like, oh, hold on, wait, maybe we were wrong. So I think that's really important, is just know that you're not always right. Like you said, you're not always right and you're not always wrong,
Right.
but question those things. So I'm so glad that you said that. I really enjoy that. And is there anything else that you want to add in here?
Um, yeah, if you see me walking down the street, if you see me in the grocery store, I typically wear this when I go to the grocery store just to get the point across. Shameless advertising on the back. I've got my email and my phone number on the back of my shirt. I've got it on Facebook. I've got my main Facebook profile. I've got my candidate profile. Um, Majority of my activities on my main profile, and I encourage anybody that's in Ward 6 or outside of Ward 6, and they're just curious, reach out to me. I want to know. There's a lot of people in Nashua for the size of the city. There's a lot of people, and door knocking is a primary way to get out and to meet your constituents. And I've got a lot of houses to get to in the next 27 days, and to meet as many people as I can. If you have questions, if you have concerns that you want to know if I have the same concerns that you do, please reach out to me. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat. I don't care. My job will be to have the best interest of Ward 6, and make sure Ward 6 has a voice, regardless of your party. If I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to earn that vote, and get the position, I'm not just there to be the voice for the Republican Party. I am there to be the voice of Ward 6. Um, so please feel free to reach out, ask questions, and well, not globally. What I've learned too is going through this process and being way more involved than I ever have been before is there's so many avenues to get in touch with candidates. Some of the people that are running, Don Bolduc, I reached out to him on Facebook. He gave me his cell phone number, and I had a conversation with Don Bolduc. Hansel, um, I reached out to him. I've been able to contact these people through Facebook, and the majority of them want to talk about why they're doing it and their stance on these issues. And and the smear campaign commercials are ugly, and they're ugly on both sides, and they're ugly for a reason. And in my opinion, is probably not a very good reason. I don't want to slander anybody, and but reach out to them and get in contact. You'd be surprised how easy some of them, even at the higher levels, maybe not at the federal level, but at for your New Hampshire representation at the federal level, how many of these people are really concerned and really would be happy to talk to you. So reach out to me, to them. They'll You'd be surprised who will actually reach out to you and answer your questions directly.
Yep, and that's for anyone in any state. And mostly what I found is that if people are truly running for what they state, they will make themselves open to those conversations and those contacts. If they are hiding things or they have different agendas, they typically tiptoe around that. I mean, that it might just because people are busy, but typically that's what I've found. And for the election's coming up on November 8th. So make sure that you guys check your states so that you know when the cutoff is for voting. New Hampshire, you can register to vote day of, but that's not the case with every state. So make sure you guys are checking that. Make sure that you guys are getting out there and voting because this is really important. And Chris, you have my vote, so I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that you are someone who represents us and getting to talk to you and do this. Also, you've made me kind of go, oh, maybe next time this is something I might
Hey,
like to do. So thank you for getting out and for using your voice and for actually standing up and making change and getting out there in your community and putting yourself in there to make these changes start to happen because it all starts with you. So I appreciate this so much. Thank you.
thank you so much.